Scarcely noticed by most of the world, the civil war in Syria has been grinding out for more than a decade. A proxy war with the central government of Bashar al-Assad, who is a secular socialist leader of the Ba'ath Party, supported by its traditional ally Russia, along with Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon, against an assortment of radical jihadi militias, including remnants of al-Qaeda, supported by the United States. I know it hurts your brain. Under the cover of going after the terrorist group ISIS, the balance of power had remained relatively stable at the front lines despite the threat of total fragmentation as Syria's Kurds seized their own autonomous zone along the Turkish border. All that until a couple of weeks ago when everything got crazy again. Now an al-Qaeda affiliate called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, also known as HTS, and its allies have launched an offensive that has shocked the world by capturing the second largest city in Syria, Aleppo. The TMI show now brings you an exclusive look from directly inside HTS-occupied Syria with Stephen, I hope I get this right, Sahounie, a Syrian nationalist and journalist in Aleppo. What's it like to live under HTS control? How likely
the flag of a different country.
How likely are they to top the government of Bashar al-Assad in Damascus? What would be the regional and global implications of a radical jihadi state on the border with Israel? The United States has been trying to persuade al-Assad to abandon his allies, Russia and Iran, but has so far failed. Is that likely to change? Can Russia, trying to close the deal in Ukraine, divert resources in order to save the government of Syria? What are the implications for Israel right next door? A lot to unpack, and we pre-recorded this shortly before, just less than an hour before we went on the air here. You're muted, Manila. You're muted.
I'm going to be able to chat with you all as we roll this video. We're going to put it up on full screen. We pre-recorded with Stephen. I've talked to him before. Like he fled Aleppo after the earthquakes, and it was horrible to find out that. You remember Ted, during those massive earthquakes that was like hit the tri-state area, including Turkey, and the shit just came crumbling all over Aleppo. And the United States decided, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and apply sanctions while you're under earthquake rubble, so that way nobody can help you.
We're so sweet.
That's Joe Biden's administration is so thoughtful. That's so nice. And apparently it still hasn't been lifted. So so that was like less than 2 years ago. They're trying to recover from that, and now in Aleppo, and now this. So let's roll it. Right now you're muted.
This is very important, guys. So stay tuned and watch this. You're going to need to know about this.
He was excellent. Let's make sure this video gets rolling. All right, everybody, the video has begun. The recording has begun. So, Stephen, right, I'm going to remove you. Are a Syrian national. I've talked to you before about, after the earthquakes and all of that, and the Joe Biden sanctions, and apparently none of that has been lifted. You guys are still suffering in Syria, and now Aleppo has fallen to these terrorist groups. Can you tell us who these terrorist groups are that are taking over Aleppo? And I'm also reading that they're now trying to travel south into Homs.
That's true. This is the same group that's been since 2011, when the Obama administration started this new Middle East and the Arab Spring, and he funded it, and the war on Syria. This group, in the beginning, in 2011, they were called the Syrian Free Army. Then they changed their name to Jabhat al-Nusra, then to ISIS, then to the al-Nusra Front again. Now it's called HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. They're the same people. They didn't change. They just changed their clothes. They changed their name. And the mainstream media fixes them and makes them look like angels. And we saw yesterday in the Security Council, they call them rebels. Rebels who are from Chechnya fighting in Syria, who are Uyghurs, who are Uzbekistan fighters, Tajikistan fighters, and also rebels, Syrian rebels, who the first thing they do when they enter Aleppo, they lift up the Turkish flag, the flag of a different country, on the symbol of the city, and that's the citadel of Aleppo. That is who took over Aleppo. Also, in the first few hours, the first thing they did is they went into the prison and they let out more than 3,000 prisoners, killers, murderers, rapers, thieves. And today there are groups stealing cars, knocking on doors, attacking people in their house because of those murders. That who is taking over, that's who took over Aleppo, and they did not attack in 100 or 200. They attacked in thousands. They attacked the city in the thousands with the support of the Turkish Secret Service and the American Secret Service. The American State Department has been funding them, and they've been giving them the taxpayer money for years. And Trump stopped that. President Trump stopped that. And also, there's reports that the White Wolf group, who's Ukrainian, they're in Idlib, also supporting them and fighting. So this is an intelligent war between the US, Turkey, NATO against Syria, Iran, and Russia. It's much bigger than opposition and Syrian army and government and democracy and freedom.
Wow. Ted, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So Stephen, let me ask you about this Turkish affiliation, right? I mean, Turkey, we think of as the ultimate secular Islamic state, ever since Ataturk, and even though there's been a move toward Islamic nationalism under Erdogan, still it's a secular state more than not. Why would Turkey want to involve itself with the kind of radical jihadis that you're talking about? That's the first part of my question. My second part is, what happens if HTS, this as they're currently called, what happens if they take over, if they defeat al-Assad and they install themselves in Damascus? Does this essentially turn Syria into an ISIS-like caliphate? Does it turn it into Afghanistan under the Taliban? Is there an analogy that we can look at in order for, as Americans, to understand exactly what the implications would be ideologically and otherwise?
First of all, Turkey always wanted to take over Aleppo, because today Aleppo, even if just 2 minutes, just to say why Aleppo is so important. Aleppo,
Please.
It is one of the biggest cities in the Middle East. It is one of the biggest industrial cities in the Middle East. And also in 2010, Aleppo was, the factories of Aleppo was making everything for Syria. Syria went to zero importing. And that is because of the factories of Aleppo. And in 2010, Syria had the biggest industrial city in the Middle East, and that was in Aleppo. That's why, and the people of Aleppo, they are known for loving, they've been in business, and their love in business and in industrial, and they've been doing that for 10 years. Today we're talking about the oldest city on planet Earth. He always wanted it. That's number one. Number two, he's been wanting to sit on with the Syrian government, Bashar al-Assad, on the negotiation table. But President Assad has been refusing, and he's saying, I will sit on the table with Erdogan only if you pull your military out. The Turkish today, the Turkish army is occupying parts of Syria. President Assad said several times, we will sit on the table, but pull out your troops. So he wants to force the Syrian government to sit on the table under his condition, as they say, negotiation under fire. And that is why, and Syrian government will not accept that, and they will not go for that. And that's why they asked for the help of their allies, Iran, the Iraqis, and the Russians. That's number one. Number two, God forbid if this happens and this HTS takes over Syria, we will be another Afghanistan. But that's the problem, is that the American State Department and the White House, they use these groups in their missions. Any country that says no to the United States or their anti-imperialism, we demonize them on the media, and at the same time we'll send them these radical groups. They did it to Gaddafi, they did it to Ali bin Abdullah Saleh in Yemen, they did it to Saddam Hussein, they did it to several countries, and also, of course, Syria. If Syria falls, and that's why we see today all of the Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Egypt, the Arab League, all supporting President Assad. This is the first time it happened in 15 years. We are
Yes.
talking about nations, rich nations and powerful nations are supporting him in fighting terrorism. And that's why I see they will not succeed, because he has massive political support.
What about Israel? I mean, Syria, I mean, it's one thing. Afghanistan is landlocked. Much of its border is with countries the United States doesn't either hates, like Iran, or doesn't care about, like Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. But Syria is smack dab against Israel. If it becomes it gets ISIS, it becomes effectively a Taliban in the Middle East, then what happens? I mean, aren't the Israelis can't be happy about that, right? There's got to be a split between Israeli policymakers and American policymakers.
They're very happy, the Israelis.
Really?
Those are their those are their number one fighters. Those are their other army. These groups in the years back, when they were occupying the south of Syria, Daraa, Quneitra, and Sweden, the south of Syria. When the Syrian army used to bomb them and attack them, they used to go to Israel used to take them to their hospitals and fix them. And Benjamin Netanyahu, he went to the hospitals and checked on them. And
like in the Golan Heights, right?
In the Golan Heights. And he went and checked on them in the hospitals, and there's videos of that. It happened in 2013 and 14. And also, when you see the Israeli media concentrating on the research center in Aleppo, non-stop talking about the research center, and at the same time, 24 hours after that, the scientist, he's an Armenian Christian scientist from Aleppo, leaving Aleppo, trying to flee for his life, with a bullet in his head while fleeing. So the only one who wants that is Israel.
But it's insane, right? I mean, from their own point of view, they're complete idiots from their own point. From their own point. I mean, even if they don't care about Syria, it's crazy for them, right? In the long run.
Yeah. Yes, and but also they want to separate Syria from Lebanon, from the border. That's why they want to go down from Hama to Hummus. Hummus, it's on the border with Lebanon. So they want to separate the Syrian government from Lebanon, so Hezbollah does not get any more weapons and support. So they cannot resist the Israeli occupation in the south of Lebanon. So this all turns up in the favor of Israel.
Interesting. Let me ask you something, Stephen, about the timing of all of this. I mean, you brought up the U.S. State Department and what have you, and the Joe Biden administration. He's in his last 5-6 weeks of office, and we saw in the past year or 2 years that the Arab League has now normalized relations with Bashar al-Assad. Why all of a sudden do you think this insurgent terrorist group suddenly appeared in Aleppo? It seemed like for a long time, for the last year, since the earthquake, that things seemed a little bit calm. Why now? Why all of a sudden in Joe Biden's last 6 weeks of office, this is happening?
This takes us to inter-American policies, and that is Biden wants to cause as much chaos as he can to give Trump as possible. He lit up. He gave the order for the Ukrainians to use long-range missiles. He's lighting it up in Georgia. He lit it up. He's supporting Turkey and calling these terrorist rebels, and he has a big role in these terrorists. So he's trying to cause chaos for Trump as much as he can in different areas in the world, so he can keep him busy for the next 4 years. Because we all know that Trump, he does not want to use the American taxpayer on wars like Middle East and Korea. Sorry, not Korea. So, I mean Ukraine, and using the American taxpayer to war. He wants to use that money for the economy, to rebuild the economy. So they don't, and the Democrats, they don't want that. They want to keep. They love war. They love keeping the weapon factories and merchant busy and making money. That's why they're doing it.
Stephen, let me ask you, what is it like there in Aleppo? What part of the city are you in? Have you seen any of these fighters? I mean, having been to the Middle East, I imagine that most people are off the streets just staying home, only going out the bare minimum to get supplies early in the morning. Shutters are drawn. I mean, is that basically the situation? People are hunkering down with as much as possible. And have you seen any of these fighters driving by or walking by in the streets?
First of all, I'm in Latakia, but I have a lot of relatives in Aleppo, and I'm in contact with them every day and every hour, checking on them. The majority of the citizens, they're staying home. They are these terrorists, they're trying to, as they say, brainwash these people. They give them a few loaves of bread here and there. They give them a little bit of gasoline. They're trying to brainwash them to say, oh, look, we're good. But in reality, they have much bigger goals than other goals. Like, for example, they went to the Christian neighborhoods and they took off all of the Christmas trees and and forbid them because they're Islamic terrorists. At the same time, one of my relatives, he was driving a car and he had a cigarette in his hand, and they screamed at him and they almost beat him because he had a cigarette, and to them, cigarette is illegal.
It's haram.
So it's haram. Also, the same thing for a woman with a scarf. A woman cannot walk around with a scarf. So all of this, that's why it's scaring the people. Like, there's a lot of people, the naive, the simple people, they'll believe in that, giving them a few loaves of bread and some gasoline. But there's a lot of people, they're not believing it because they know them. These same groups, these same terrorists, just 3 years ago, they had Aleppo surrounded and forbidding water and food from them. Also, years ago, 2-3 years ago, these same terrorists, they were launching missiles on the civilians, and they killed hundreds of civilians in the past years of the war.
What about like hospitals and stuff, Stephen? Hospitals, schools, stuff like that? Is civilian infrastructure still in place with the terrorists taking over Aleppo?
Schools and colleges are shut. The hospitals are still going, but there's a lack of equipment and lack of doctors, because about 2 million out of 6 million, 2 million fled the city. And if the doors were open, much more could have fled.
What does it? I mean, the reports that we're getting is that the central government of Syria did not defend Aleppo. They basically ran away, right? I mean, they claimed that even by their own account, they quote unquote dozens of Syrian soldiers were killed, dozens, to defend such a huge city, and were lost in this. I mean, what happened there?
Were they just unprepared for this attack?
First of all, we're talking about a government military of a country. We're not talking about a militia. So after 15 years of war, it's any army will be tired. Any army will cannot go on, stay on alert for 15 years straight. As we all know, we're talking about a government military. At the same time, there was a deal between Turkey, Russia, and Iran, the Astana meeting, for decreasing tension. The Syrian army, so that's why they were not on high alert, because there was an agreement for decreasing tension. And at the same time, as I told you, the Syrian army, after 15 years, they did everything. They did everything possible that they can. There's hardly any more men, because, as I told you, because it's been 15 years, not 1 or 2. And also, a lot of the allies of Syria went to South Lebanon, like we're talking about. Hezbollah went to the South Lebanon. The Iraqis, they went back to their countries. They saw the situation decrease. But as always, and as Turkey stabbed in the back, they stabbed Russia in the back, they stabbed Iran in the back, and of course they've been stabbing Syria in the back for decades now.
Stephen, let's talk about Russia. Syria and Russia are close allies. They have been for a very long time, since the Soviet period at least. And it would be a tremendous loss of prestige for Russia to lose Syria. What do you think? I mean, can President Putin send enough resources? I mean, he's trying to close down, and he's close to victory in Ukraine. So he wants to finish that war, obviously. What is it likely that the Russians are going to deploy more resources soon in order to come to maybe liberate Aleppo?
Today, now, since the battle started, the Syrian Air Force and the Russian Air Force have been targeting these terrorists. They've been already killed over 1,500 of these terrorists already in the city of Idlib, Hama, and the suburbs of Aleppo. So the Russian help and the Russian support for Syria, if it was politically or militarily, Syria wouldn't have survived and stood up on its feet without the Russian support, starting from September 2015. Today, who saved Syria? It's of course the Syrian army and their martyrs, that's for sure. But if it wasn't for the Russian support and the Russian help, it wouldn't have. That's on one side. On the other side, today, Syria is. Russia today is a superpower, growing superpower, standing in the face of the United States. There are a lot of competition militarily, politically. There are alliances of Russia, China, and Iran. So Russia is trying to build their allies, make their allies strong, and increase their where they're at. Like we're seeing in Africa. Politically, I'm talking, and economically, and we're seeing in Syria. Today, Russia has 2 military bases in the coast, and that is to save and to keep the interest, the national security. Today, Syria is the national security of Russia. If, God forbid, these terrorists take over Syria, then they'll go to Iraq. They will go to then to Iran. Then they're on the borders of Russia, and the Russian government, they know that and they understand that. That's why they're standing with a secular Syria and a Syria with no terrorism.
And what about the Arab neighbors? As we mentioned earlier, in the last couple of years, the Arab League in particular, after isolating Syria from basically the family, we can call it that, right? For more than a decade. The relations are now thawed. Do you foresee any of the members of the Arab League also stepping up and coming in to help the Assad government?
Big supports coming, political support. I'm talking political support, and that's even sometimes much more important, because what's happening today in Syria, it cannot be finished militarily. It can only finish politically. But it's going to wait until who wins more on the ground so they can be stronger on the table. But today, when you see Saudi Arabia and the UAE supporting President Assad, we're not talking about poor countries or weak countries. We're talking about countries that the superpowers they listen to, and the superpowers they take by their advice. And today, when we hear Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the president of the UAE, Mohammed bin Zayed, saying we support President Assad in his war against terrorism, that's mean they support. There's big support. And also the Arab League. The only Arab country who's not standing with Syria is Qatar, because Qatar have alliances with Turkey, and that is because Qatar and Turkey are Muslim Brotherhood, the terrorist group called Muslim Brotherhood. They have that ideology.
Normally, Stephen, you would expect the UN Security Council to go into emergency session over a development like this. That hasn't happened yet. There's just been sort of some quiet expressions of alarm. Why do you think that is?
Because what's happening, it's in the fear of America and what America wants. If it was something against America, or America was losing, then you will see the National Security meeting, the Security Council meeting. Then you will see the mainstream media calling him a dictator, calling the Syrian government dictators and killing children. And you don't be surprised if they'll use the chemical attack Syria again. They will use that when they start losing. But as long as they're winning, the Americans are winning and they're in a powerful, you won't hear any condemning or any meetings to finish this.
Stephen, there is a report in this morning's New York Times that the quietly behind closed doors, in the mindset of American policymakers, a lot of this has been about trying, believe it or not, to get al-Assad to move away from Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia toward the United States. They think that they're pressuring him to join some sort of, alliance or friendship or frenemy status with the U.S. Is that true? And if it's true, what exactly are these Americans thinking? It's not exactly a good way to make friends.
The war on Syria started because of that. They launched this war on Syria in 2011 because of that. They wanted Syria to leave Iran and Russia. Because, as you said, Syria has old ties with Russia, going back all the way to the Soviet Union. And if you read Syrian history, it will go back even in history when Russia was still an empirism. Syria, there was good relationship between Syria and Russia. So in historical, they've been close. The United States, they want to get the Syrian government and Syria away from Hezbollah and Iran. They've been doing that for decades. They're unable. And that's why sometimes the American, they do mistakes. They don't learn from their mistakes, and they don't learn from past lessons. We're talking about President Bashar al-Assad and his late father, Hafez Assad. They have the same mentality, and they have the same foreign policy. They don't go under pressure. No matter what happens, they don't bow down. That's the Syrian foreign policy. And that, more important than that, Syria doesn't stab their allies in the back. Because in 2010, there are reports that the old crown prince, the father of Hamad, the crown prince, the father of the crown prince now, his father came and met with the Syrian president and told them they want to put a gas pipeline from Qatar to Syria to Europe to cut the gas off of Russia. Syrian president went to Russia and showed this. That's what the U.S. wants. So Syria doesn't stab back their allies. If they accepted that project, Syria wouldn't have this 15 years of war. But because of Syria is loyal to their allies, to Iran, to Hezbollah, to Russia, they're loyal to China, to their allies, and I'm talking in the East. That's why they're paying this big price, and they destroyed our country completely, and we've been suffering for 15 years because of that.
And and lots of countries have been that have been between great powers have seen that the United States is a feckless ally and not really to be trusted anyway.
So true.
Yeah. Last thing I'll ask you, Stephen, is what about Bashar al-Assad's position in the country? Does he still have wide support within the civilian population across Syria?
Yes, because especially after this happened, he does have wide support in all sects and all religions in Syria. He does have wide support because, look, let me just one thing. After 15 years, the Syrian people are tired. They're tired from everything. They just want to finish. They want the situation they finish. They want to go back to their jobs and factories. They want to go back. They want electricity all the time. Like now we're getting 45 minutes of electricity now because the terrorists in Aleppo, have shut off the electricity off of the rest of the country. Off of the electric plant in Aleppo, they gave it only to Aleppo, besides giving it to the whole country. So we're having half an hour of electricity, hardly any more gasoline and fuel. The same people are tired. And at the same time, they don't want to live under extremists. The same people have never been extremists. Syria is over 10,000 years old. We're a secular country. There's 18 different sects in Syria. There's churches, mosques. There's even some Jews. And we all live in peace. Until 2010, until the American interfered.
It's a beautiful country.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about what's going on there. Well,
we're praying
and it will
for
be
your
again.
family in Aleppo.
I hope so.
Thank you so much.
One quick
Stephen.
question: how's the cell phone service? Is that 24 hours? I mean, in Afghanistan under the Taliban, they shut it off at night.
They started now in Aleppo. They started shutting it off, and now they're putting their own cell phones. So the cell phone connection is very bad.
Wow.
They've been shutting off the Syrian cell phone, and they're putting their own cell phone, and Turkish also.
Wow.
What a strange situation. 2 million people basically held hostage in a big city. It's just very, very strange. So we're obviously paying attention. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Much more than 2 million.
Much more.
Aleppo 7 million. Aleppo 7 million. 2 million fled Aleppo. Yes, 2 million fled Aleppo, and there's still about 4 to 5 million.
How many HTS fighters do you think there are in Aleppo occupying Aleppo? I mean, that's a big city.
As I understood, when the big first attack, there were between 20 to 35,000 fighters.
Wow.
Yes.
So it's in war, it's hard to occupy a big civilian population like that for any length of time. I mean, if this were to continue, I'm sorry, very quickly, could you imagine there being a civilian resistance cropping up?
Actually, it's already started. There's small clashes, and there's a lot of the militants being found killed. And no one, the terrorists are not understanding how or who or why. So the civilian resistance already started in Aleppo.
Do Syrians have guns?
Until 2011, no one had gun, only the police. Now, almost everyone. I don't, but almost everyone.
Gotcha.
Wow, I feel like we're witnessing, like you said, these small clashes, people secretly attacking the terrorists. Like, it's like private civilians, if they see an opportunity, they just take them out. That's like a movie.
But all Syrians believe that this is the last battle. Like, this is the last battle, then this crisis is over. Then there's a political solution. So all the Syrians are, for sure, that's why they're being patient, because they know this is the final battle.
Why do they think that? Why are they convinced of that?
Because of the international how the international politics is going, especially with Trump coming in. Really? Trump and Russia are close to each other for several reasons, and also at the same time as the Arab support. We never had that Arab support, so the situation politically is changing. So that will affect Syria to better.
I hope so. I hope you guys, I hope Trump comes in and drops these Biden sanctions, and hopefully other, help can be on the way. Thank you so much, Stephen. So. We hope you can join us again to keep us updated with everything.
Okay. Please stay safe, and for your family too.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.